Oh, I'm sorry.
Rock history can't be written without groupies. To many outsiders, they were simply a wild indulgence, untamed women who put sex in sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But to the groupies, as well as the artists, these women were so much more than that.
What do you want?
A life.
Number 20, Pamela Anderson. Pamela Anderson's love life has been far from ordinary. Her most intimate moments have been broadcast to the entire world without her consent. With more twists and turns than the most thrilling roller coasters, Pamela, a love story star, has admitted she's a hopeless romantic. In her memoir, Love, Pamela, she reflects on her current life. I live a more romantic life now that I'm alone than I did in relationships. I light my candles, have my music playing. I have my piano. It would be lovely if someone else was in my life and wanted the same thing, but I've just never met them. It's usually about catering to them, and there has to be a balance. She continues, I don't need someone to bring me roses. I've just planted 100 rose bushes. I can get them anytime I want, and they're my favorite roses. The Baywatch babe, Pamela Anderson, has certainly led a captivating life. She tied the knot with Tommy Lee, drummer of the band Motley Crue, and raised 2 children with the rock star over the course of 3 years. After her breakup with Tommy in 1998, she had a relationship with Bret Michaels and tied the knot for a second time with Kid Rock in 2006. While Pamela Anderson has been legally married 5 times, she's only had 4 husbands: Tommy Lee, Kid Rock, Rick Sammon, and Dan Hayhurst. She even married and divorced Rick Solomon twice. Since splitting from Kid Rock, though, the Canadian-American actress and model has stepped away from her rock and roll groupie days. Today, she manages her own charity that supports individuals and animals. Number 19, Courtney Love. As a rock and roll groupie, Courtney Love is most famous for her marriage to the legendary Kurt Cobain of the grunge music band Nirvana. However, even before her relationship with Cobain, Love had a notorious track record of relationships with other rock stars. Names like Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins and Michael Stipe of R.E.M. were part of her romantic history. But beyond the infamous groupie tag, Courtney was a successful artist in her own right, particularly as the lead vocalist of her own band, Hole. The story takes a haunting turn after Kurt Cobain's death. Courtney Love mentioned that he could have just stopped performing instead of leaving her and their daughter, Frances. After Kurt's funeral in April 1994, Courtney tried to get back on her feet and started touring with Hole, but she couldn't suppress her emotions of sadness and anger. Her actions while touring, such as mental breakdowns, angry rants, or physical assaults towards people in the audience or fellow musicians under the influence, led to a series of legal troubles. It was clear that Courtney was struggling to accept Kurt's death. She gave numerous interviews in which it was evident how challenging it was to deal with people blaming her for Kurt's death or fueling his bad habits. However, whenever Kurt's fans approached her in a positive way to honor his memory, she would talk to them and share stories about their life together, even consoling them. Despite this, she would react negatively whenever someone brought up Kurt Cobain during a Hole concert, as demonstrated by her rant during the SWU Festival in Sao Paulo in 2011. You might have expected Love to be more at peace with Kurt's death after 17 years, but this incident proves the opposite. Number 18, Sable Starr. Sable Starr, a name well known in the world of rock and roll groupies, began her career while still in high school, living a double life by day attending classes and by night getting close to famous musicians. Her young age placed her among the Baby Groupies, a group of underage girls who were known to frequent the Sunset Strip in the 70s. She once explained to Star magazine in 1973, "It's more like an ego thing, just to be able to call up girlfriends the next day and say who I was with last night." Sable's lists of conquests read like a rock and roll hall of fame, including David Bowie, Rod Stewart, Alice Cooper, Mick Jagger, Mark Bolan, and members of Led Zeppelin. She later became involved with Johnny Thunders of the New York Dolls, moving to New York to live with him. However, the relationship quickly turned toxic. Problems plagued the couple as Thunders became increasingly violent and prone to fits of rage toward Sable. She later recalled, "He tried to destroy my personality. After I was with him, I just wasn't Sable Starr anymore. He really destroyed the Sable Starr thing." Sable Starr's tumultuous life inspired Iggy Pop's 1996 song Look Away, in which the Stooges frontman chronicled the chaotic relationship between Thunders and Starr, while also admitting his own affair with the groupie in the song's opening verse, "I slept with Sable when she was 13. Her parents were too rich to do anything. She rocked her way around LA till a New York doll carried her away." Number 17. Connie Hamzy. Known as Sweet Connie, Connie Hamzy began her journey into the world of rock and roll groupies at the tender age of 15. Her mother dropped her off early at a Steppenwolf concert, and from there, she ventured around the backstage area. Little did she know that this chance encounter would kickstart her extraordinary life as a groupie. Sweet Connie quickly took a liking to the rock and roll scene and became a regular at concerts in her native Little Rock, Arkansas, and neighboring areas. What sets her apart from other groupies is the astounding list of rockers she claimed to have relations with. The names on her list read like a who's who of rock legends: Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, Keith Moon, John Bonham, David Lee Roth, Huey Lewis, Frank Zappa, Geddy Lee, Peter Frampton, Don Henley, Eddie Money, Alice Cooper, Neil Diamond, and all 3 members of ZZ Top. Connie Hamzy's escapades in the world of rock made her a celebrity in her own right. Her exploits were even immortalized in songs by rock bands. Grand Funk Railroad mentioned her in the lyrics of "We're an American Band," and Cheap Trick also referenced the legendary groupie in their 1985 track "Standing on the Edge." In a candid moment during an appearance on the Joan Rivers Show, Sweet Connie admitted to a record of being with 24 men in a single night, although her average was around 15. Number 16. Lori Maddox. Lori Maddox, sometimes spelled Maddox, was another of the baby groupies who roamed the Sunset Strip during the 70s. She often ran in the same circles as Sable Starr, another famous groupie from that era. In a 2015 conversation with Thrillist, Maddox looked back on her teenage groupie days and made headlines with her claim of losing her virginity to none other than David Bowie. She described the experience in reverent terms, saying, "The way it happened was so beautiful. I remember him looking like God and having me over a table. Who wouldn't want to lose their virginity to David Bowie?" Maddox's romantic entanglements in the rock world didn't stop with Bowie. She also had a relationship with Jimmy Page that lasted for more than 2 years, during which she admitted to being totally in love with the Led Zeppelin guitarist. She even claimed to have been with Mick Jagger while his wife Bianca was preparing for surgery. However, some have questioned the accuracy of Maddox's recollections due to conflicts in her various stories and inconsistencies in the timelines. Regardless of the skepticism, there's no doubt that she was part of the 70s rock scene, and her relationship with Page is well documented. Looking back on those wild days, Maddox shared her perspective. "I saw the greatest music ever. I got to hang out with some of the most amazing, beautiful, most charismatic men in the world. I went to concerts in limos with police escorts. Am I going to regret this? No." Number 15. Bebe Buell. Bebe Buell, despite her objections to the term groupie, is undeniably one of the most famous muses in the world of rock and roll. In her own words, she considered herself a free agent and an independent, successful woman, emphasizing that she made her own money and bought her own things. Her list of famous boyfriends reads like a rock and roll hall of fame and includes Mick Jagger, Iggy Pop, Rod Stewart, David Bowie, Elvis Costello, Todd Rundgren, Jimmy Page, and Steven Tyler, with whom she shares a daughter, actress Liv Tyler. Bebe Buell's approach to relationships with rock stars was characterized by her independence and lack of exclusivity. She once explained, "I think every little girl would like exclusivity, but that wasn't how it was. If you had a jealous streak, the 70s wasn't your era. And I figured if he was going to date, I would date too. I had lovely boyfriends. For your first 3 boyfriends to be Mick Jagger, Todd Rundgren, and David Bowie, I don't think anyone would have a problem with that." Number 14. Audrey Hamilton. Unlike many women of this list who actively pursued the rock and roll lifestyle, Audrey Hamilton found herself accidentally thrust into the world of groupies. It all began with a chance conversation with a Led Zeppelin roadie at a bar. This chance encounter led her to meet the band, and when she came face to face with Robert Plant, sparks immediately flew. Robert Plant invited Hamilton to join the band on the road, and she enthusiastically accepted. For months, she traveled with Led Zeppelin and experienced the whirlwind life of a rock star, even though both she and Plant had spouses waiting for them at home. Tragically, their romance and tour were cut short when Plant's 5-year-old son, Karak, passed away from a stomach illness. The grief-stricken singer immediately returned home and withdrew from the limelight. Though he and Hamilton maintained contact for a while, their romantic relationship never resumed. The song Hot Dog on Led Zeppelin's 1979 album In Through the Outdoor is rumored to have been inspired by Audrey Hamilton, a testament to the impact she had on the legendary rock band. She would go on to have more rock star relationships, most notably having a child with Kiss guitarist Ace Frehley. Number 13. Tawny Kitaen. Julie Tawny Kitaen had a captivating journey through the entertainment world. She initially made her mark as a beauty pageant participant and later achieved celebrity status as an actress. Some of her most notable films include Gwendoline, an adult-only movie, the horror film Witchboard, and less controversially, Bachelor Party, in which she shared the screen with legendary actor Tom Hanks. Tawny Kitaen's life, however, extended beyond the boundaries of Hollywood. She also had a presence in the world of music videos, making appearances in Whitesnake's iconic videos for Still of the Night and Here I Go Again. Her connection to Whitesnake went beyond the screen, as she was married to the band's lead vocalist David Coverdale from 1989 to 1991. Sadly, Tawny Kitaen passed away at her home in Newport Beach in 2021, as reported by the Orange County Coroner's Office. She was 59 at the time of her passing. Number 12. Nancy Spungen. Nancy Spungen's journey into the world of rock and roll groupies was anything but conventional. A 17-year-old girl from Philadelphia, she made a bold choice to drop out of the University of Colorado and move to the vibrant and gritty scene of New York City. There, she integrated herself into the emerging punk crowd, rubbing shoulders with seminal rockers like Johnny Thunders and Cheetah Chrome. Although Nancy Spungen is often remembered as the American girlfriend of English Sex Pistols bassist Sid Vicious, her life as a groupie extended far beyond her connection with the punk star. Born in Philadelphia, she ventured to London at just 15 years old, where she met Sid Vicious during the golden years of punk rock. Her adventurous lifestyle introduced her to prominent bands like the Ramones, the New York Dolls, and Aerosmith. Tragically, in October of 1978, Nancy Spungen passed away, her life coming to a sudden and unfortunate end. She was found inside her room at the infamous Chelsea Hotel. A case was filed against Sid Vicious, holding him responsible for her untimely passing, but the rock star's fate ensured he never reached a court trial. Number 11. Erin Everly. Not all groupies were drawn to the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. For many adolescents in the late 80s and early 90s, Guns N' Roses was the band that captured their hearts and imagination. When thinking of Guns N' Roses and their entourage of groupies, one name immediately comes to mind: Erin Everly. Born and raised in Los Angeles, Erin Everly gained fame as the spouse of Axl Rose, the band's legendary lead vocalist. The two lived together for a year from 1990 to 1991. Although their relationship was relatively short-lived, it had its share of romantic moments. In fact, Axl Rose was so deeply in love with Erin that it inspired him to compose one of Guns N' Roses' most celebrated songs, Sweet Child of Mine. Their relationship was not a well-kept secret among friends and those around the band. According to Rolling Stone, the band Great White used a recording of Erin Everly defending herself from punches thrown by Axl on their 1992 Psycho City album. In March of 1994, Erin Everly initiated her own lawsuit against Axl Rose, alleging physical and emotional abuse, as well as unpredictable rage outbursts. Axl had a different perspective, and the lawsuit was eventually settled outside of court. After the release of the Chinese Democracy album, Axl talked about the song Oklahoma, which was inspired by the court case with his former wife and the city of Oklahoma. Number 10. Marianne Faithfull. Marianne Faithfull's journey into the world of rock and roll groupies is marked by her elite upbringing. She was raised by a father who played a significant role in British intelligence and was a professor of Italian literature, and a mother who was the daughter of an Austro-Hungarian nobleman. From an early age, Faithfull displayed a passion for singing and songwriting, which eventually led her to cross paths with Andrew Loog, the manager of the Rolling Stones. This connection paved the way for her introduction to the legendary Mick Jagger. While her affection was primarily directed towards Mick Jagger, rumors swirled about her involvement with other members of the band. As is often the case, Marianne Faithfull's romance with Mick eventually reached an inevitable breaking point. Following this chapter, she ventured into relationships with other rock stars, experiences that were a mix of both the harmonious and the controversial. Number 9. Pattie Boyd. Pattie Boyd was a woman blessed with exquisite looks and charm. She graced the cover of the prestigious fashion magazine Vogue, which was just one facet of her illustrious career as a model. Beyond modeling, Boyd made her mark as a successful photographer, capturing iconic musicians like Eric Clapton and George Harrison in her lens, with her photographs being showcased worldwide. Boyd's journey through the rock and roll world is quite unique. She left her marriage to George Harrison for his best friend Eric Clapton in 1974. While some might view this as the ultimate marital betrayal, George Harrison's response was remarkably good-natured. He said, "Well, I'm glad you're going off with Eric instead of some idiot," Boyd recalled. George humorously referred to himself as Clapton's husband-in-law from that point on. Pattie Boyd's allure extended to the numerous stars in the rock and roll realm. She was married to George Harrison for 10 years, from 1966 to 1977, and then to Eric Clapton after their divorce. The powerful song Layla was rooted in Clapton's marriage to Boyd. However, their relationship also had its share of struggles, eventually leading to their separation in 1989. Beyond her role in the world of rock and roll relationships, Boyd's skills as a photographer were honed through years spent on the other side of the lens. Her journey began when an agent approached her about a modeling job while she was working as a shampoo girl at a London beauty salon in 1962. Before long, she was posing for legendary photographers like David Bailey and Terrence Donovan, adorned in the latest haute couture designs by renowned fashion designers, including Ossie Clark and Mary Quant. Number 8. Kathy Smith. Kathy Smith, once the girlfriend of singer-songwriter Gordon Lightfoot, might have been remembered primarily for inspiring the hit song Sundown had she not crossed paths with John Belushi at the Chateau Marmont on March 5, 1982. Smith, who had been a backup singer for the Rockers who later formed The Band, she claimed The Wait was inspired by her, admitted to injecting Belushi with the heroin and cocaine speedball that ultimately led to his death at the age of 33. In a 1986 agreement with prosecutors, she pled no contest to involuntary manslaughter and several other charges, and subsequently served a 15-month prison sentence at California Institution for Women. Following her release, she was deported to her native Canada, where she reportedly took on a job as a legal secretary. Prior to Belushi's untimely death, Smith was known within rock music circles for her work as a backup singer for Levon Helm, Rick Danko, and Richard Manuel, who would later become founding members of The Band. In the early 1970s, she became Lightfoot's girlfriend and muse. The number one hit Sundown was written by Gordon Lightfoot about his tumultuous, extramarital, and occasionally violent relationship with Smith, with the dark lyrics juxtaposed against a lilting, bluesy melody. Sundown, you better take care. If I find you've been creeping around my back stairs, Lightfoot's Sundown LP also topped the charts in the US and Canada, and Smith is credited as a backup singer on one of its tracks, High and Dry. In the late 1970s, Smith served as a backup singer for country star Hoyt Axton, and according to Wired, Bob Woodward's 1984 biography of Belushi sold items to the Rolling Stones, Ron Wood, and Keith Richards. Although she had briefly met Belushi when Lightfoot appeared on Saturday Night Live in 1976, she became reacquainted with the comedian through her interactions with Wood and Richards. Kathy Smith's role in Belushi's death brought significant notoriety and revulsion, although it was largely avoided by Belushi's male friends, including Robin Williams and Robert De Niro, both of whom reportedly used cocaine with the comedian on the night of his death. This insight comes from Sean Levy's 2019 book, The Castle on Sunset. Number 7. Miss Mercy. At the age of 9, Miss Mercy had her first near-death experience when a riptide nearly drowned her while she was swimming in the ocean. This incident seemed to imbue her with a sense of invincibility, and she would go on to test the boundaries of that feeling numerous times in her life. Her parents provided a fitting backdrop for a life filled with recklessness. Her father was a womanizer who suffered from delusions of grandeur, while her mother battled depression. By the age of 15, she was already living on the streets of San Francisco, a move that coincided perfectly with the Summer of Love. Her intense attraction to and appreciation of music, coupled with her single-minded determination, enabled her to befriend or become romantically involved with many musicians in the historic scene of the 1960s. However, the book makes it clear that sex was never the primary motivator for Miss Mercy. According to those who knew her, she wasn't even particularly interested in having sex with these musicians. She simply wanted to be in their orbit. Miss Mercy's distinct sense of humor became a point of attraction for the men she encountered, especially when she didn't conform to conventional beauty standards. Her unconventional and unique approach to style further helped her stand out. Inspired by silent film actor Anita Pallenberg, she adopted a distinctive look with heavy makeup that accentuated her eyes and wore layered clothing, creating her interpretation of the hippie gypsy look. This distinctive aesthetic, combined with her assertive character, earned her a spot on the cover of Rolling Stone twice. First, she appeared in a story about the Haight-Ashbury Gathering of the Tribes, in 1967, and later in a famous piece about the groupie scene, complete with photographs shot by Baron Wallman. Women like Miss Mercy and Pamela, who shared similar attitudes, played a significant role in the revolution of the time, and their sense of style left a lasting influence. In 2018, fashion designer Alexa Chung launched the Muse line in honor of their look and character. According to Pamela Des Barres, Mercy loved the fact that we were getting attention later in life. We were so imitated. Number 6. Barbara Cope. Barbara Cope may not have been as famous as some of the other groupies, like Pamela Des Barres or Cynthia Plaster Caster, but she left a lasting impression in the memories of those who encountered her during the rock and roll era. She was known as Dallas's leading groupie and graced the cover of Buddy magazine in November 1973. Despite initial plans to write her autobiography, she never did, leaving her unique story untold. Barbara Cope retired from the rock scene at the young age of 22, marking the end of her involvement with rock stars. In a Los Angeles Times interview, Cope recounted how her life took a significant turn in 1965 when she attended a concert at Memorial Auditorium in downtown Dallas. That pivotal moment spurred her to move to Los Angeles to get closer to the never-ending rock and roll party. There, she connected with the likes of Jimi Hendrix and even went on the road with bands like Traffic. Led Zeppelin's Robert Plant asked about her from the stage when the band performed in Fort Worth in 1973. She also toured with Joe Cocker in 1970 and appeared in the film documenting that tour, Mad Dogs and Englishmen. Barbara Cope's encounters with rock stars were numerous and varied. Her interactions with famous musicians like Elton John became the stuff of legend. In a 1987 show about groupies that featured Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley of Kiss and Pamela Des Barres, Cope revealed that she had been involved with approximately 2,000 musicians during her few years with backstage access. Number 5. Anita Pallenberg. Anita Pallenberg, a popular model and budding actress, was already mingling with the social elite when she found herself drawn into the world of the Rolling Stones. In 1965, she went backstage after the band's performance in Munich and met guitarist Brian Jones. Their immediate connection led to the start of a tumultuous relationship. Pallenberg and Jones had a volatile dynamic, marked by substance abuse and conflicts. After 2 years together, Pallenberg decided to move on to another member of the band, Keith Richards. Keith Richards recalled that his first impression of Anita was of a strong and extremely bright woman who was also a great beauty. Their relationship endured until 1980 and produced 3 children. Jones, on the other hand, struggled after his breakup with Pallenberg and was ultimately ousted from the Rolling Stones in June 1969. Tragically, he passed away a month later. Anita Pallenberg left her mark on the Stones in various ways. Mick Jagger's remixed several tracks on Beggar's Banquet at her suggestion, and she contributed backing vocals on Sympathy for the Devil. Number 4. Cleo Odzer. Cleo Odzer's journey into the world of rock and roll was different from many other groupies. She began her career as a music journalist for a small New York newspaper, which gave her access to various artists. One of those artists was Keith Emerson, the frontman of The Nice and later a member of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Odzer and Emerson were reportedly engaged in late 1968, but their relationship took a turn in 1969 when she was labeled a super groupie in a Time magazine article. This designation led to their breakup, but it didn't deter Odzer from continuing to immerse herself in the rock and roll scene. Cleo Odzer claimed to have had relationships with several notable musicians, including singer Terry Reid and members of bands like Deep Purple, Cream, and others. In 1969, she released The Groupies, a spoken-word album where she and fellow groupies discussed the intricacies of their world. This album remains one of the first authentic first-person accounts of life as a rock groupie. While pursuing her unconventional lifestyle, Odzer managed to attend college and later graduate school. In 1990, she earned a PhD in anthropology from the New School for Social Research in New York City. However, her story took a tragic turn when, in March 2001, she was found comatose in a hotel room in Goa and passed away 2 days later in a hospital. Number 3. Cynthia Plaster Caster. In the world of groupies, Cynthia Albritton, also known as Cynthia Plaster Caster, stood out with her unique gimmick. She once shared that she was a shy, inexperienced, and somewhat goofy young woman with a desire to connect with cute British boys with long hair and tight pants. To overcome her lack of experience and seductive charm, she decided to create an unconventional approach. Cynthia's inspiration came to her while she was in her college art class. She came up with the idea of making molds of musicians' erect penises as a way to meet them. Her first subject was Mark Lindsay of Paul Revere and the Raiders, and while the plaster mix didn't work out, she did lose her virginity to the singer. Eventually, she perfected her plaster mix, and her groupie life began in earnest. Cynthia Plaster Caster became known for her molds of the private parts of famous musicians. Jimi Hendrix, Wayne Kramer of MC5, Gene Simmons of Kiss, and Pete Shelley of the Buzzcocks were among her most notable subjects. Her legend even found its way into songs like Kiss's Plaster Caster in 1977 and Jim Croce's 5 Short Minutes in 1973. Number 2. Chris O'Dell. Chris O'Dell was a prominent figure in the music scene of the 1960s, well known as a confidant and groupie to some of the era's most iconic music acts. Her connections in the industry were remarkable, having been romantically involved with Ringo Starr of the Beatles. She expressed interest in George Harrison and Paul McCartney as well, showcasing her bold approach. Chris O'Dell's journey into the music world began when she was employed by Apple Records at the age of 20. Her work at Apple Records, the label founded by the Beatles, allowed her to witness some of the most epic moments in music history. Although she wasn't a music artist herself, she played a vital role behind the scenes. O'Dell also worked for the Rolling Stones and became a close companion to the legendary Bob Dylan. Her influence extended to Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones, and she spent a significant amount of time with him. The fact that George Harrison even composed a song with her name in the title, Miss O'Dell, reflects her unique place in rock and roll history. Number 1. Pamela Des Barres. Pamela Des Barres had a childhood immersed in music, growing up in a family of music aficionados. She was a dedicated fan of Elvis Presley, the Rolling Stones, and the Beatles, idolizing them from a distance. Little did she know that her destiny would bring her closer to these musical legends than any fan could ever dream of. As an adult, Pamela found herself babysitting for Frank Zappa and mingling with up-and-coming artists in the Los Angeles area. Her first taste of the rock and roll lifestyle involved the Rolling Stones and the Byrds. However, Des Barres was also known for her relationships with iconic figures like Keith Moon, Jimmy Page, and Jim Morrison. She became the inspiration behind the famous Beatles song Penny Lane and the character played by Kate Hudson in the movie Almost Famous. Dave Navarro once referred to her as rock's premier groupie and muse, a title that is difficult to dispute. Pamela Des Barres, born as Pamela Ann Miller, has a storied history with a multitude of rock's biggest stars. Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, Mick Jagger, Keith Moon, and Jim Morrison are just a few of the many musicians she spent time with. Many of these relationships lasted for years rather than being one-night stands. Des Barres firmly believed in the influence of groupies on the lives of these rock stars, stating, "Groupies enhanced these people's lives in a huge way, and if it weren't for us, they would not be who they are." So, there you have it. The remarkable and sometimes haunting lives of these famous groupies. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more fascinating music stories. And if you have any favorite groupie stories or want to share your thoughts, leave them in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.